The auditorium was alive with applause, camera flashes, and the kind of nervous laughter only proud families make when watching their children graduate. My daughter, Lila, in her deep navy gown and cap tilted slightly to the left, walked across the stage with the confidence of someone ready to conquer the world. I held my breath. I wanted this moment to be perfect. I wanted all eyes on her. Just her. But then it happened. From the far side of the auditorium, Noah, her boyfriend, stood up. His voice, sharp and furious, ripped through the clapping like a crack of thunder. "Tell her who her real father is." The hall fell into a suffocating silence. 1,000 heads turned. Professors paused. The principal froze mid-handshake. Cameras swung like predators toward me, toward Mark, my husband, toward Lila, who now stood mid-stage, frozen in horror. Mark's hand crushed the graduation program until the glossy paper split in his fist. My body went rigid. All the air left my lungs, and for a split second, I thought I might collapse right there in my seat. Because Noah wasn't screaming nonsense. He wasn't pulling a cruel prank. He was ripping open the one truth I had buried for nearly 2 decades. The truth that could unravel everything. I should have prepared for this. I should have known the past never stays buried. Just last night, I had tucked an old photograph into my purse, the one picture I couldn't bring myself to burn. Lila as a toddler, her arms tangled around me. And Ray, my husband's old business partner. His smile, careless. His hand too close to mine. A memory disguised as family friendship. I told myself I carried that picture as a warning, as proof of what not to repeat. But deep down, I think I carried it because it held a secret only I truly understood. And now, thanks to Noah's outburst, that secret was standing trial in front of the entire world. Lila's steps faltered. Her diploma slipped slightly in her hands. "Dad?" She whispered toward Mark, but her voice carried across the microphone still clipped to her gown. "Mom?" The audience, restless, began to murmur. Phones lit up like fireflies. Recording, streaming, spreading the poison of my past faster than I could blink. Mark didn't answer her. He just turned toward me, his face the color of ash, his jaw twitching. His eyes weren't asking a question. They were accusing. And in that moment, with my daughter's future bright as the stage lights and my marriage crumbling under the weight of Noah's words, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just about a secret. It was about survival. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like this video and subscribe. But only if you truly enjoy what I'm sharing here. And tell me, where are you watching from? Maybe your city, maybe your time zone. I want to know who's with me tonight, as I open the darkest chapter of my life. Because what Noah shouted across that stage was only the beginning. And the truth? The truth was far worse than even he knew. The morning of the graduation, before any of this chaos unfolded, I had already been haunted. I sat at my vanity, brushing my hair, trying to calm my nerves. It wasn't just the pride of watching Lila walk across the stage. It was the gnawing awareness that every milestone carried a shadow. My reflection betrayed me. Behind my makeup and smile was a woman who had lived with a lie for 18 years, and tucked in my purse was the proof of it. A photograph. It had yellowed at the edges, the colors fading into sepia tones. In it, I was holding Lila, maybe 2 years old, wearing a polka-dotted dress and a crooked grin. Beside me, his arm draped across the back of the chair. Ray. I used to call him Uncle Ray when Lila was small. Just a family friend, I'd say. Someone who helped us through hard times. Mark never argued. He simply cut Ray out of our lives one day, like trimming off a diseased branch, and told me to never speak his name again. I should have thrown that photo away. But every time I tried, something stopped me. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was love. Maybe it was the memory of one night. Just one, when loneliness and betrayal blurred the lines between right and wrong. That morning, as I slid the photo into my purse, something slipped out from behind it. A folded note. I froze, recognizing the handwriting instantly. Ray's. 9 months before she was born. She'll always be mine too. My breath hitched. I had forgotten this note was hidden there. My chest tightened as I read it. The words more like a confession than a declaration of love. I stuffed it back behind the photo, praying no one would ever see it. But what do prayers mean when destiny is already circling like a hawk overhead? Now, after Noah's public eruption, the photo weighed in my purse like a stone. Mark hadn't seen it. Lila hadn't seen it. But if either of them did... I looked across the room at my daughter that night, sitting on the couch, silent, her eyes swollen from crying. She glanced at my purse once, like she could feel something was hidden there. "Mom," she whispered, voice trembling. "Is it true?" I opened my mouth, closed it again. The truth burned my tongue like fire. But fear that I'd lose her forever, kept me silent. And here's the cruelest part. That photo wasn't the only evidence left behind. There were others who knew. Others who could confirm what Noah shouted wasn't just teenage drama. It was a crack in the foundation of our family. And one of them had been sitting silently on this secret for almost 2 decades. What would you do if you found an old photo of your parent with someone you suspected was more than just a friend? Would you confront them, or hide the photo away? Because in my case, hiding it didn't save me. It only delayed the explosion. And the next revelation? It was coming faster than I could brace for. The ceremony ended in a blur. I don't even remember clapping. I don't remember standing when Lila descended the stage, diploma trembling in her hands. All I remember is the weight of Noah's words echoing in my skull like church bells at midnight. The car ride home was silent. Not the kind of silence that means peace. No, it was a silence that pressed against the skin, made every breath sharp, and turned every glance into a blade. When we walked through the front door, the dam broke. Mark slammed the door shut so hard a picture frame rattled off the wall. His face was flushed, veins pulsing at his temples. He didn't even take off his jacket. "Is it true?" His voice thundered through the living room. "Tell me right now. Was Noah shouting the truth?" Lila stood in the corner, clutching her diploma to her chest like a shield. Her cap was still on, tassel tangled in her hair. She looked so small, so young, despite the robe that was supposed to signify adulthood. "Mom?" Her voice cracked. "Dad's not... my dad?" The question gutted me. I opened my mouth, desperate to weave something, anything that might protect her. "Sweetheart, Noah doesn't know what he's talking about. He's confused or maybe angry." But the look in her eyes stopped me. She didn't want comfort. She wanted truth. Mark's laugh was jagged, bitter. "Don't you dare lie again." He reached into his desk drawer, pulled something out, and slammed it on the coffee table. An envelope. Sealed, yellowed, brittle at the corners. "I ordered this test when she was 5. He spat. "DNA, I never opened it." His chest heaved, fury mixing with grief. Because I told myself it didn't matter. That raising her, loving her, that was enough. My knees went weak. The room tilted. My heart lodged in my throat. He had known. All these years he had suspected. He'd lived with that suspicion like a parasite, feeding off our marriage, feeding off me. And now, with one crumpled envelope, the secret I thought I owned alone suddenly became his too. Lila stared at the envelope like it was poison. Her hands shook. "So, you've all been lying to me?" I tried to reach her. "No, baby, it wasn't like that. I wanted to protect you. I wanted..." "Protect me?" She snapped, her voice breaking. "From the truth?" Tears blurred my vision. My hands trembled as I picked up the envelope, weighing it like it contained the future. Maybe it did. Do I open it now? Or do I destroy it before it destroys us? The room pulsed with questions, but no answers. Mark paced like a caged animal. Lila sat, her eyes rimmed with fury and betrayal. And me, I was drowning in my own silence. Because I knew what that envelope might confirm. And I also knew it might not matter anymore. The damage was already done. What would you do? Open the envelope and face the truth, or burn it and try to preserve what's left of your family. Because in that moment, every choice felt like betrayal. And before I could decide, someone else would. The envelope sat between us like a live grenade. No one moved. No one breathed. Finally, Lila stood. Her hands trembled, but her chin lifted with a determination I didn't recognize. She snatched the envelope from the table. "If you won't tell me the truth," she whispered, her voice sharp as glass, "then I'll find it myself." Mark lunged forward. "Don't." But it was too late. She ripped the seal. The paper inside was brittle, the ink slightly faded. Lila's eyes scanned the page, and I watched as her face changed. First confusion, then shock, then a hollow kind of rage. "It says..." She swallowed hard, her lips quivering. "No paternal match. Mark isn't my father." Her voice cracked on the word father. Mark closed his eyes as though bracing for a punch. His fists clenched at his sides. He didn't cry. He didn't speak. He just stood there, a man whose entire identity had been reduced to a line of text on a lab report. The silence after was unbearable. Until a knock at the door. We all froze. When it opened, there was Noah, standing tall and furious, holding another envelope. He didn't even ask permission to come inside. He stormed straight into the living room, eyes burning into mine. "You owe her the truth," he said, thrusting the envelope toward Lila. "This isn't from 20 years ago. This is from last month." Lila's hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a printout from a popular ancestry DNA service. She had sent her saliva for a class project, and the results had returned with a match. Not to Mark, but to someone with the last name Raymond. Ray. My chest collapsed inward. My worst fear had been confirmed, not just by one test, but two. And then Noah twisted the knife. "It gets better," he said, his tone dripping with accusation. "That same profile is linked to a scholarship donor. Someone who's been paying part of your tuition for years?" Lila blinked, stunned. "What?" I closed my eyes, shame burning me alive. Because I knew. I knew before he said it. "Ray." Mark's face turned crimson. "You knew about this," he hissed at me. I tried to deny it, but the words died in my throat. My silence was answer enough. Lila staggered back, her diploma slipping to the floor with a dull thud. "So everything about my future, even my education, has been paid for by a man I don't even know?" Her eyes, red and wet, flicked between me and Mark. "Do either of you ever tell me the truth? Or do you just keep writing checks and lies?" The room spun. My heart hammered. I wanted to reach her, to explain, to pour out every hidden reason that once felt like love but now looked like betrayal. But she was already walking out the door with Noah. And as it slammed shut behind her, I realized the truth was no longer mine to control. "What do you think? Should Noah have been the one to hand her that second envelope? Or should it have come from me? Her mother? Because either way, the damage was spreading faster than I could stop it. And the next person drawn into this storm was the man I had tried to erase from our lives. After Lila stormed out with Noah, the house felt cavernous, empty, yet buzzing with the echo of truths I could no longer bury. Mark retreated to his study, slamming the door so hard I thought the wood might crack. I stayed in the living room, clutching the photo from my purse, the one with Ray's face pressed so close to mine. For 18 years, I had hidden him in the folds of my memory. But now, with Noah's revelation, with the scholarship trail, with the tests, I couldn't hide him anymore. So I did something I swore I'd never do. I called him. The phone rang once, twice, straight to voicemail. My voice shook as I whispered into the receiver, "They know." Everything I hung up, then sent a text. "We can't run from this anymore." The dots appeared, then vanished. Appeared again, then nothing. That silence was worse than any words he could have sent. By morning, I couldn't stand it. I drove to the marina where Ray used to keep his boat. For years, that slip was empty. We told Lila he'd moved overseas, that he had no reason to stay. But when I arrived, the harbor master leaned against the railing, eyes narrowing as he recognized me. "You're here for Ray?" he asked. My chest tightened. "He's still around?" The man nodded slowly. "Boat's gone, but he came by last week. Brought a young man with him, looked a lot like your daughter." My hands went cold. I pressed further, desperate. "Did he leave anything behind?" The harbor master hesitated, then ducked into his office. He returned with a folded slip of paper, smudged with ink. A clinic reminder card. Genetics Institute. Follow-up appointment. The date was only a few days away. Back home, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the card. Mark hadn't spoken to me since last night. The walls of his study were barricades I couldn't cross. But now I had proof that Ray wasn't just lurking in the background. He was making moves. Quiet moves. Moves that involved genetics. Was he planning to confirm what Noah had already shouted to the world? Or was there something else, something even bigger lurking behind that appointment? My phone buzzed. It was a message from Lila. Short. Brutal. "If he's my father, then why did you hide him from me?" My throat closed. Tears spilled hot down my face. How could I explain that the night with Ray wasn't just about desire, but about survival? That back then, Mark had betrayed me first, and Ray felt like a lifeline? That the decision to stay silent wasn't meant to rob her, but to shield her from a storm? How do you tell your child that lies were your way of loving them? What do you think? Does a biological parent have the right to step in after being cut out for nearly 2 decades? Or does love belong to the one who stayed, even if he stayed with resentment? Because Ray's silence wasn't just silence anymore. It was a countdown. The next day, I went to Lila's school. Not because she asked me to, but because I needed answers. I needed to know why her tuition had been paid in part by a man we had erased from our family portrait. The counselor's office smelled faintly of coffee and paper. She shuffled nervously as I sat across from her, wringing my hands. I shouldn't even be telling you this," she whispered. But since the donor requested recognition at graduation, my stomach dropped. "Recognition?" She nodded. "The condition on the scholarship was clear. Anonymous support until your daughter crossed the stage. Then the donor wished to reveal himself." I gripped the edge of the chair, my breath shallow. So Noah's outburst wasn't just an impulsive betrayal. It was premature. Ray had been planning to step into the spotlight today, to lay claim in front of everyone, with the authority of a man who had been funding her future all along. I pressed my palms together to stop them from shaking. Who signed the agreement?" The counselor slid the paper across the desk. My eyes blurred as I saw my own maiden name scrawled in black ink. It was my handwriting. A signature from years ago. Somewhere in the haze of fear and desperation, I had agreed to this. I had locked our future into Ray's timeline without fully realizing it. Or maybe I had, and buried the memory with everything else. Walking back to my car, my knees felt weak. I leaned against the door, trying to breathe. The truth wasn't just dripping anymore. It was pouring. Mark had lived a lie for years. I had lied to protect us. And Ray had turned his absence into leverage, funding her dreams like a silent king waiting to take the throne. And Noah had simply pulled back the curtain before Ray had the chance. When I got home, the scholarship contract still burned in my bag. Mark was waiting. He sat at the table, eyes bloodshot, his expression brittle. "I know where you went," he said flatly. I tried to explain. It was about her tuition. He slammed his fist on the table. "Don't you dare twist this into charity. This was his plan all along, to buy his way back in. And you—" He jabbed a finger at me, shaking with rage. "You signed the deal. You let him. You made me a fool." Tears pooled in my eyes, but I couldn't deny it. The paper in my purse was proof enough. I sat across from him, whispering, "I was trying to secure her future." "By selling her past?" he snapped. The words sliced me open. Upstairs, I heard the creak of a door. Lila's footsteps. She had heard enough. Her face appeared at the top of the stairs, pale and tear-stained. "So, you all knew," she whispered. "My scholarship. My future. My whole life, written in secrets." Her voice cracked and she bolted back into her room. The slam of her door reverberated like thunder. "What do you think? Is an anonymous donation still generosity, if it comes with strings that eventually strangle the truth? Because in my family, that donation wasn't just about money. It was about ownership. And the cost was about to rise. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house was too still, too heavy, every creak of the floorboards sounding like accusation. Mark stayed locked in his study. Lila, upstairs, had cried herself into silence. At 2 a.m, I heard movement downstairs. I crept toward the study door, and when I pushed it open, the sight froze me in place. Mark sat at his desk, the lamp casting shadows across his face. His hands moved quickly, flipping through an old leather-bound ledger. Beside it, a stack of envelopes, thick with receipts and bank slips. I whispered, "What are you doing?" He didn't flinch. He didn't look up. He simply shoved a page toward me. I stared at the column of transactions. Each line carried the same cryptic label. Consulting, R. Payment after payment, stretching back almost 2 decades. "Consulting?" I echoed, my voice shaking. Mark finally looked up, his eyes hollow. "Not consulting. Compensation." The word sucked the air from my lungs. "From Ray?" I whispered. He nodded slowly. "Every quarter. Like clockwork. Money for the business, for the house, for Lila's education. He didn't just pay for her tuition. He paid to keep me quiet." I stumbled back, clutching the edge of the chair. You knew?" His laugh was bitter. "Of course I knew. Do you think I'm a fool? I confronted him years ago. Told him I'd destroy him unless he contributed. And he did. He funded everything, all while staying in the shadows." I shook my head, my chest burning. "You turned her life into blackmail?" "No." His voice cracked. "I turned my pain into survival. Do you think it was easy raising another man's child, pretending every day? This was the only way I could stay. The only way I could swallow the humiliation his words slammed into me. He hadn't stayed out of love. He'd stayed because the price was right." A silence stretched, thick and unbearable. I whispered, "You let her believe she had a perfect family, when all along you were profiting off the lie." He slammed the ledger shut. "And you let her believe I was her real father, when you knew damn well I wasn't." His rage collided with mine, the truth spiraling between us like shards of glass. We had both built our lives on lies, his motivated by pride and money, mine by fear and guilt. And now, Lila was drowning in the fallout. Suddenly, the door upstairs creaked. Lila stood on the staircase, her robe clutched tightly around her, her face pale in the dim light. Her voice was small but sharp. "So which of you ruined me worse? The one who lied to me, or the one who sold me?" Neither of us answered. We couldn't, because she was right. "What do you think? Who carries the greater blame? The mother who hid the truth, or the father who weaponized it for money?" Because in our house that night, guilt wasn't measured in halves. It was drowning us all equally. I didn't sleep after Lila's question. Her words haunted me. The one who lied, or the one who sold me. Both were true. And maybe both began long before she was born. Because the truth is, Lila's story started on a night I never wanted to remember. It was raining that evening. Sheets of water pounding against the windows, thunder rattling the walls. Mark and I had fought. One of those brutal, soul-shredding arguments where everything ugly you've ever buried comes spilling out. I had discovered messages on his phone. Not from a stranger, but from a woman I knew. A coworker. Someone I had welcomed into our home once. Their words weren't about love. They were about stolen moments. nights in hotels, laughter that should have been mine. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. He just shrugged. It didn't mean anything. But to me, it meant everything. That night, Mark left. He slammed the door, took his pride with him, and left me standing in a kitchen that smelled like betrayal. I was hollow. Number. And that's when Ray appeared. He had been Mark's business partner then, but more than that, he had been a friend. He came over under the pretense of checking on me, his coat dripping from the storm. I should have sent him away. But when he said softly, "You don't deserve this," I collapsed into his arms. One night. Just one. But one night was enough to change everything. When Mark came back a week later, I was already pregnant. I told myself it was his. I convinced myself the timing worked. And when Lila was born with Mark's smile, or maybe I just imagined it, I decided the lie was kinder than the truth. Ray begged me once to tell her the truth when she turned 18. "She deserves to know who she is," he said, tears in his eyes. And I promised. But when the day came, I couldn't do it. I told myself she was too fragile, that I would wait until graduation, that one more year wouldn't hurt. I lied to Ray. I lied to myself. And worst of all, I lied to her. Now, standing in my kitchen years later, I realized the rain hadn't stopped. It had just been waiting. Mark's betrayal had started the chain reaction. My weakness had continued it. Ray's silence had fueled it. And Lila was the one paying the price. Later that night, I found myself sitting outside her bedroom door. I wanted to knock, to confess everything, to tell her she wasn't the result of a mistake, but of a mother who was broken and trying to survive. But my hand froze inches from the wood. Because what if my confession didn't heal her? What if it shattered her completely? So I sat in the hallway, weeping silently, the weight of 18 years pressing down on me. And in that silence, I realized something chilling. Ray hadn't vanished. He had been waiting all along. And now, with Noah's shout and the scholarship strings, he was ready to step back in. Tell me, if you were me, would you have told your child the truth when they turned 18, as promised? Or would you have done what I did, and convinced yourself the timing wasn't right? Because lies don't disappear. They ferment, and the taste when they finally spill out is poison. The morning after my sleepless night, I woke to a sound I dreaded. My phone buzzing over and over, notifications lighting up the screen like fireworks. At first, I thought it was friends or neighbors gossiping about Noah's outburst. But when I opened the app, my heart nearly stopped. It was Lila. She had uploaded a video. Her face filled the screen. Red eyes, raw emotion, no makeup. The caption read, "Am I just a secret?" Her voice cracked as she spoke. Yesterday was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. But instead, I found out that the man I've called Dad for 18 years might not even be my father. And my mom... She looked away from the camera, her lip trembling. My mom's been hiding this from me my whole life. So I need to ask, am I just the product of lies? Or am I allowed to know who I really am? The video was barely 3 minutes long, but it exploded. Thousands of views in hours. Comments poured in, half of them furious on her behalf, half warning her to tread carefully. Your boyfriend did the right thing. You deserve the truth. No matter what the DNA says, the man who raised you is your father. Secrets like this destroy families. Your mom had no right. Every comment was a knife. Some cut me, some cut Mark, some cut Ray, and all of them cut her. By noon, local news outlets had picked it up. Graduate's boyfriend exposes paternity secret during ceremony. Her name, our name, splashed across headlines. I felt the walls closing in. Mark barely spoke. He sat in the living room watching the video on repeat, his jaw tightening each time she said, "My mom." When I tried to approach him, he muttered, "This is your storm. You created it." I wanted to scream that he had his own sins, his own bargains, but I couldn't. not while our daughter's pain was being shared with the world. Then, a message appeared in Lila's inbox, one she almost ignored. It was from a woman named Elena. The message was simple. I'm Ray's sister. There's more you need to know. When Lila showed me the message, my stomach dropped. I hadn't spoken to Elena in years. She had once held Lila as a baby, whispering that she looked just like her brother. I had brushed it off as coincidence. Now, her reaching out meant one thing. Ray's side of the family was stepping into the light. And if Ray himself wouldn't speak, his sister would. That evening, I knocked on Lila's door. She was curled on her bed, scrolling through the flood of comments. Sweetheart, I whispered, don't let the internet decide your worth. She shot me a look that burned. The internet didn't lie to me. You did. Her words shattered me more than any headline ever could. So tell me, if you were in her shoes, would you put your family's secrets online to force honesty? Or would you keep them buried, even if it meant living in doubt? Because my daughter's pain was now viral. And the next voice joining the chorus carried blood ties I could no longer ignore. We met Elena in a quiet cafe on the edge of town. Lila insisted on bringing Noah, and I didn't argue. She needed someone she trusted, someone who hadn't betrayed her. Mark refused to come, saying he'd had enough circus acts. Elena looked older than I remembered, her hair streaked with gray, her eyes sharp but kind. When she saw Lila, she gasped, her hand covering her mouth. You have his eyes. Lila shifted uncomfortably. Whose? Elena reached across the table, her hand trembling as she took Lila's. My brother's. Ray's. But that's not all. There's something you don't know about him. About all of us. The words hung in the air like smoke. I braced myself, afraid of what was coming. Elena lowered her voice. Ray and Mark, they share the same father. Half-brothers. They've hated each other since they were young. Business rivalry, family betrayal. It poisoned everything. And then you. She looked at me, her eyes narrowing with a mix of pity and blame. You got caught in the middle. My heart stopped. Lila's jaw dropped. Wait, are you saying my dad and Ray are brothers? Half-brothers, Elena confirmed, which means... She trailed off, letting the weight sink in. I buried my face in my hands. Lila wasn't just born from betrayal. She was born into a feud that spanned generations. Elena reached into her bag and pulled out a weathered envelope. This belonged to their father, your grandfather. He left a will, and in it he wrote about the granddaughter who carries our eyes. He meant you. Layla stared at the envelope like it was cursed. She didn't take it. She didn't push it away either. My voice cracked. Why are you telling us this now? Elena's gaze hardened. Because Ray isn't just hiding. He's sick, and he doesn't have much time left. He wanted to wait until graduation, but now, everything's been forced into the open. Lila's hands shook as she finally reached for the envelope. She didn't open it, just held it against her chest like a weight she wasn't ready to carry. When we left the cafe, Lila was silent. Noah kept a protective hand on her back, but I could feel the storm inside her. On the drive home, she whispered, almost to herself. So my father, and the man who raised me, are brothers. And I'm just the consequence of their war. Her words cut me open, because she wasn't wrong. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the living room, staring at the dark ceiling. All I could think was, had we cursed her before she was even born? Tell me, if you learned your parents' betrayal tied you into a feud you never asked for, would it change who you believed yourself to be? Because for Lila, identity wasn't just about biology anymore. It was about bloodlines, legacies, and battles that began long before her. The next morning, I couldn't stop thinking about Elena's words. Half-brothers, a will, a granddaughter written into a legacy she never asked for. But what haunted me most wasn't the past. It was the feeling that more lies still lurked in our walls. so I searched. I waited until Mark left for the office, his face stony and silent, his hands gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing holding him together. Then I crept into his study. I knew I'd find something. I just didn't know how much. The bottom drawer of his desk was locked. I found the spare key taped beneath the shelf. Inside was a folder thick with printed emails. My stomach twisted as I scanned the subject lines. Quarterly transfer agreement. Continued support. Tuition installment. Each message was a transaction. Cold. Calculated. From Ray to Mark, but it wasn't just money. It was language. Mark's words sliced through me. Quarterly payments will continue as agreed. In return, I remain silent regarding paternity. This arrangement ensures her future is secure, and your absence remains tolerable. Tolerable. He had turned fatherhood into a contract, my daughter's life into leverage. I sank into his chair, bile rising in my throat. I kept reading, each email darker than the last. One in particular made my blood run cold. After her graduation, I will tell her myself. It's time she knows the truth, and I will be the one who delivers it. She deserves to see me as the man who endured the lies, not the one who created them. Mark. He hadn't planned to keep the secret forever, but his timing, his motive, it wasn't love. It was image. He wanted to play the hero in the final act, and Noah, unknowingly, had stolen his performance. Behind me, the floor creaked. I spun around, clutching the folder to my chest. Lila stood in the doorway. Her voice was quiet, but her eyes blazed. So he wasn't just silent. He was blackmailing my real father? I tried to explain. I tried to tell her that I hadn't known the depth of Mark's cruelty, but my words faltered, tangled in shame. She stepped forward, her hands trembling. All of you lied to me. You traded me like property. You used me as a bargaining chip. Her voice cracked. Do you even love me, or do you just love the secrets? I reached for her, desperate, but she pulled away. Her tears weren't loud this time. They were quiet, dangerous, the kind of tears that carved rivers you couldn't dam back up. She whispered, I don't know who I hate more, you, him, or the man who left. Then she turned and walked away. Tell me, if the truth comes from a place of manipulation, does it even count as truth anymore? Or is it just another form of betrayal? Because in my family, honesty had become just another weapon, and the scars it left were deeper than any lie. Elena came back 2 days later, her hands clutching a small box. She looked at me with eyes that carried both pity and accusation. Ray wanted her to have this when she turned 18, she said softly, but it was returned to him. Mark sent it back. Lila and I sat at the kitchen table. My hands trembled as Elena set the box down. Lila hesitated, staring at it like it might bite her. Finally, she opened it. Inside was a sealed envelope and a delicate silver locket. Her hands shook as she picked up the envelope. On the back, in my own handwriting, were the words, "Return to sender." Lila's head snapped toward me. You sent it back?" Tears stung my eyes. I thought it was better that way. I didn't want to confuse you, to ruin your life on your birthday. You had exams, your future... Stop, she snapped, her voice breaking. Stop pretending you did this for me. You did it for yourself, to keep the secret, to control the story. Her hands tore open the letter. The paper was neat, Ray's handwriting careful, almost formal. My dearest Lila, if you're reading this, you are 18 and I have kept my promise to wait. I wanted to tell you long ago, but your mother believed you weren't ready. I don't want to disrupt the life you've built, but I want you to know. You are mine too. Not in a way that replaces the man who raised you, but in the way that means you carry my blood, my history, my love. The silver locket belonged to my mother, your grandmother. It was meant to be passed down. I hope one day you'll want to wear it. If not, keep it anyway, as proof that you were always thought of, always loved. Lila's hands shook as tears splattered onto the page. She clutched the locket tightly, pressing it against her chest like it might stop her heart from breaking. I whispered, "Lila, please," I was scared. I didn't know how to... She cut me off, her voice sharp as glass. "You stole this from me. You stole him from me? And now you want me to believe it was out of love?" Her words were knives, each one piercing deeper than the last. Elena reached across the table, her voice trembling. "He never stopped thinking about you. Even when he stayed away, even when he sent money he didn't want to send, even when he got sick. You were always his reason." Lila's face crumpled. She clutched the letter and the locket, sobbing quietly. And I sat there, drowning in the realization that sometimes the lies you tell to protect your child end up stealing the very love they deserve to have. What would you have done? Given her the letter and risked shattering her world at 18, or hidden it like I did, hoping she'd never know? Because now the truth had arrived years too late. And the cost of my silence was carved into her tears. The letter and locket had barely sunk in when the next blow arrived. This time, from the outside world. A thick envelope sat on the porch, stamped with the crest of Lila's university. I opened it with shaking hands, praying it was some bureaucratic update. But the words on the page sent me spiraling. "Due to recent revelations regarding donor identity and potential conflict of interest, your scholarship is under review." When I showed Lila, her face crumpled. "So even my education isn't mine? It's just another piece of his secret money?" Her voice cracked on the word his. "They can't do this," I whispered. "You earned your place." But she was already scrolling through her phone, seeing the same headlines I dreaded. Graduate's tuition linked to secret biological father. University probes hidden donor agreement. The world had taken her private pain and turned it into spectacle. Days later, we sat before a university review panel. A long mahogany table separated us from 3 officials in stiff suits. Lila's hands trembled under the table. Mark sat stony-faced, arms crossed. I spoke, my voice raw but steady. "Yes, I signed the agreement years ago. Yes, I accepted money from a man who should have stepped forward himself. But don't punish my daughter for my mistakes. She earned every grade, every award. If repayment is necessary, I'll do it. Even if it means selling my home." The words hung heavy in the room. One of the panel members, a woman with kind eyes, leaned forward. "Mrs. Harris, I was raised by adoptive parents. I didn't learn the truth until college. What I needed most wasn't punishment. It was support." Her gaze shifted to Lila. "The scholarship isn't revoked. But we need transparency moving forward. That means public acknowledgement of the donor. And your choice, Lila, whether you accept his name being tied to your future." Lila froze. The choice pressed down like a mountain. If she accepted, she legitimized Ray's role. If she refused, she risked losing everything he had given. Tears welled in her eyes. She whispered, "I don't want my life bought. I want it earned." Her words shook me, because despite all the lies, all the betrayal, my daughter still stood taller than the secrets that tried to bury her. On the way home, silence filled the car. Lila clutched the locket, her thumb brushing over its surface again and again. I wanted to ask what she was thinking, but I didn't dare. Because the next step would have to be hers. What do you think? Should she accept the scholarship knowing its origins, or reject it to stand on her own, even if it means sacrificing her dream? Because either way, the price of truth was already being paid, and the final reckoning was still to come. It took weeks of silence, anger, and unanswered calls before Lila finally agreed. "One dinner," she said flatly. "All of you. No more secrets, no more games." So we sat at a round table in a quiet restaurant, me, Mark, Ray, and Lila. The tension was thick enough to choke on. Even the waiter seemed to sense it, placing the menus down quickly before retreating. Lila's eyes darted between the 2 men. Her hands trembled, but her voice was steady. I want the truth." From both of you, Mark leaned forward first, his face pale, his jaw tight. "I knew for years," he said. "I suspected before the test. But I told myself raising you was enough, that being there, putting food on the table, paying for your school was what mattered. Biology doesn't define fatherhood." His words were true, but they were also laced with bitterness. Lila heard it. So did I. Ray's eyes softened. He looked at her with something raw, something that had been waiting 18 years to breathe. "She's right. You deserved the truth earlier. I stayed away because your mother asked me to, but not a day went by that I didn't think of you. I may not have raised you, but you're part of me, Lila." "Always have been," Lila sat back, her lip trembling. "So one of you stayed because of pride, and the other left because of fear. And I was just caught in the middle." Neither man could answer. Silence filled the table. Then, slowly, Lila spoke again. "Here's what's going to happen. I'll meet with both of you. Separately. Therapy. Conversations that are mine, not yours. And when I'm ready, I'll decide if I want the DNA test. That choice is mine. Not something for you to control, not something to wave around like proof." Her voice was steel. Mark lowered his eyes. "If that's what you want." His voice cracked, softer than I'd ever heard. Ray nodded. "I'll take whatever time you'll give me." And in that moment, I saw something extraordinary in my daughter. She wasn't waiting for the truth anymore. She was demanding it on her terms. As the dinner ended, Lila stood, her shoulders squared, her gaze firm. She looked at me last. "Mom, you too. Therapy. Not for me. For you. You can't keep burying things and calling it protection." Her words weren't cruel. They were just true. And for the first time in years, I felt both stripped bare and strangely free. So tell me, who decides what father means? The man who raises the child? The one whose blood runs in her veins? Or the child herself? Because at that table, with all our sins laid out, the answer felt clearer than ever. It wasn't mine to decide anymore. Weeks passed. The storm outside our home quieted, but inside, echoes of it still lingered. Headlines faded, comments slowed. The world moved on. But for us, the pieces were still sharp underfoot. Lila met with Ray at a small cafe every Sunday. She told me once, "We talk about books, music." Nothing heavy yet, I could see she was testing the waters, holding on to the locket like a lifeline, but refusing to let it define her. With Mark, it was different. He showed up to her therapy sessions. He listened, sometimes defensive, sometimes broken, but always there. For the first time, he wasn't using silence as power. He was learning to sit in it, to let it hurt without turning it into leverage. And me? I started therapy too. Not for her. For me. For the part of me that thought lies could be love. For the woman who buried letters and convinced herself timing would make betrayal gentler. The house feels quieter now. Honest. There are fewer slammed doors, fewer whispered arguments. We still fracture sometimes when old wounds reopen, but we don't pretend anymore. One evening, I walked past Lila's room. She was sitting by the window, diploma framed on her desk. The silver locket hung around her neck. She caught me looking and said softly, "I'm not choosing between them. I'm choosing myself." Her words filled the room like light. The truth didn't fix us. It didn't tie our story up neatly, but it gave us permission to stop performing the roles we thought we had to play. Mark was no longer just dad. Ray was no longer just the secret. And I was no longer just the protector. We were flawed, exposed, imperfect, but we were trying. So if you've stayed with me until the end, maybe your heart has felt something too. Leave a comment, hit like, and subscribe if you'd like to continue sharing these stories with me. Because in the end, family isn't just about blood or lies or even forgiveness. It's about the choice to love, even when the map of your life has been redrawn. And Lila? She chose. She chose to keep the locket. She chose to keep her name. She chose to keep going. Thank you for listening to the whole story. I hope you will support my future works.